So our next speaker is going to talk to us about highlights of Israeli stock funds and Israeli stocks and bonds trading on the U.S. exchanges. And that will be Harvey Albert, who's located here in Boston. He's a senior vice president and senior portfolio manager at RBC Wealth Management. He's worked in the financial service industries for over 30 years. Harvey holds Series 7 and 66 licenses, is a member of RBC Wealth Management's President's Council and Portfolio Focus Program. He holds a law degree from New England School of Law, has taught investment courses at University of Lowell. He is a past chairman of the WGBH Corporate Executive Council. He's an impressive guy. Here he is. Let's hear what he has to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That sounds great. Good morning. You've already heard a good bit from from Alice about investing in Israel bonds, which in terms of if you're looking for a real conservative investment and a way to participate in the Israeli economy, Israel bonds, certainly a great way to do that. And we heard from Tom some other ways to invest. He specifically mentioned private, essentially what's not a stock trading on an exchange, but a way to invest in multiple companies by investing in a private placement type of a structure. What I'm going to describe is to give you kind of an overview of other ways to invest in Israel. Excuse me, it's a little bit of a difficult area. It's not that easy to do. Foreign securities, Israeli securities are foreign securities, and many of them may trade just on the Israel exchange. They trade in Israeli currency, and it is difficult to purchase stocks that are trading on Israeli exchanges here in the U.S. It's difficult because there's currency issues. There's also reporting issues. It's also difficult to find a broker that can easily give you the information you need to make purchases directly on foreign exchanges, including the Israel exchange. So it's more difficult to get information on these companies here if they're not listed on a local exchange in the United States. Now, many companies, which you kind of heard, many Israeli companies do trade in the United States on our exchanges, and they typically trade as what's called ADRs, which are American Depository Receipts. So that's the way that you're able to purchase shares of Israeli companies here on U.S. exchanges. I'm going to describe to you the few because it doesn't seem that there's that many ways to participate other than individual securities. Other ways to participate in the Israeli equity markets. Now, there are a lot of individual securities, as you've already heard mentioned, that do trade as ADRs on our U.S. exchanges. Some names you've heard, obviously very familiar, Teva, Amdocs, Checkpoint Software, a number of the banks, Verifone Systems. So there's ways to participate in a number of individual securities, and there's many more. I was asked not to go into a lot of individual security recommendations, but there are quite a number of Israeli companies trading as ADRs on U.S. exchanges. There are only, that I have really been able to find, only a few ways to participate in a broader way in the Israeli markets, in the Israeli stock markets. So I'm just going to describe to you those that I have a little bit of familiarity with. There are a number of different structured vehicles that own other securities. So mutual funds, probably most of you are familiar with mutual funds. There's also closed-end funds, and there's also exchange-traded funds, ETFs. So there's a little bit of all of these available here in the U.S. that represent Israeli-based, primarily, investments. So one of them is a closed-end fund called Aberdeen, and that's a professionally managed fund where you have managers that pick from Israeli stocks, essentially, and put them into a portfolio. You can buy something like that on New York, on a U.S. exchange, on the New York exchange, as a closed-end fund, which represents many different stocks, primarily based as Israel companies. So that's something, again, you purchase just like a regular share on the exchange, operates as a closed-end fund. Right now it sells at a discount to its net asset value. Over the years it's done pretty well, but it's going to have a representative package of Israeli stocks in there. So that's essentially one way to get a diversified, if you're not going to try to pick the individual stocks, to get a representation and a package of Israeli companies. The second would be there is an ETF, which is an exchange-traded fund. Exchange-traded funds are any of you familiar with exchange-traded funds? Anybody? Yes?
They trade like stocks.
Trade like stocks on the exchange. They're basically they tend to be lower cost, passively managed. So it's not as though you get typically an active manager that buys and sells and picks lots of different things for you on an ongoing basis. It's typically set up as one group of securities that's kept in a portfolio. So you get to buy in. They've been selected. These are all selected because they're Israeli-based companies. And they're put into this, what's called exchange-traded fund. You can buy it, purchase it like a regular stock on the U.S. exchange. This particular ETF is called Israel ETF. And like I said, it trades here. And you can buy that and get representation now. It has about 85 holdings, primarily Israeli, all Israeli companies.
What's that symbol?
In their portfolio. The symbol is ISRA. So that's called Israel ETF, and it doesn't have a lot of money in it, but again, it's a representation of 89 different Israeli-based companies.
Is that 20 million? What's
yeah, I think it's really small, like 25 million bucks. Very small, but it is a way to participate in more than just an individual company getting a package.
And what's the symbol for Aberdeen?
Aberdeen is ISL. The other way that I've found really located, it's not something that I've purchased for clients because I don't think they have distribution availability here through other firms. I think they're only doing self-distribution. It's a mutual fund, Israel-based mutual fund. It's called Amadex 35, and it's basically a standard type of a mutual fund, but it's all Israeli companies. So that has more active management, diversified portfolio, active management, and they do their own distribution. They're based in Willow Grove, Pennsylvania, and they have a website. If you look up the Amadex, AMIDEX, you'll see their site, and you can see how to contact them and get more information about their mutual fund. My time is up, but answer any questions I can.
All right, I'd like to thank everybody for coming. Our next part of the program is Box Lunch with Brett Aaron.